explain a little bit about motivational interviewing, and then how that came into your life, and then how that really plays a big part in dentistry.
Yeah. So as a part of in that health center, we had these quarterly all clinician meetings, which was really cool. Another very, kind of innovative thing, right? Where you like bring everyone together, doctors, nurses, stuff that you're like, oh, I probably never would have be exposed to this if we were just doing our own little dental thing. And so we had this training, like 3 hours, motivational interviewing. What is this? And I think like a lot of people, you hear the word interviewing as a part of it. And you're like, is this how I like ask questions when we're interviewing someone to be on our team? And no, it's not that. It's the style that started in the early 80s in New Mexico in the substance abuse world. One of the early founders lives there. Another guy lives in Wales. So kind of very two different clinicians, but a clinical psychologist. And essentially what they were seeing at the time was like very much like the peak of DARE, drug abuse resistance education. If you grew up in my era of, everyone did that in school and whatever. But it was like very confrontational, very like scare you to make you not do things, right? You probably remember those commercials, Gary, of like, here's somebody that's, foaming at the mouth or something gross, right? To convince you not to do it. So anyways, they were just realizing from the evidence that was really not effective. And so they were students of Carl Rogers, who was really kind of a pioneer of a lot of the positive psychology movement in the 50s. His original, like any of his original texts, I would highly recommend reading. Really cool, interesting stuff around counseling and how to effectively form a relationship with patients, a therapeutic alliance, and that kind of therapeutic relationship. Really interesting guy. Anyways, that was... started doing a lot of research on it, found it was super effective, really helpful in terms of helping people change their behaviors when it came to addictions. And so people started saying, well, I wonder if that will work in primary care. Will that work in asthma? Will that work in diabetes management? Will that work in obesity management? And so, it turns out it does, really any chronic disease. And so when I found out about it, it's probably back in 2014, you started to see a few initial studies that were coming out of Australia and a few other places around, does this work in dental care? So I was like, oh yeah, this is super interesting. Where can I go learn more? And in my search, found that there was no dental professionals really at the time who were offering training, whatever. So I was like, well, I can do that. I mean, because I think one of the unique parts about dentistry, right, is, to sit in a dental chair and know, what the time constraints are, all of those different pieces, right? It feels a little unique in how the patient kind of moves through the appointment or whatever. So I got trained in it from psychologists and psychiatrists and MDs, and became a member of what's called the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. So I've spent the last 6 years or so helping dental and medical professionals as well learn how to communicate with patients to help them make behavior changes. And it's cool because I feel like the evidence that's come out over the last 6 years has really just kind of enforced this idea of it's obviously more than telling people what to do. That's not why people aren't making behavior changes. So in a nutshell, I think that's kind of motivational interviewing is just a way of helping people change. And it's a pretty special, kind of therapeutic, creator that really makes a big difference when it comes to building trust, helping your patients feel like they're in control, all of those pieces.
So you used a term that helped me understand it a little bit better. You said engaging patients as partners. Can you touch on that a little bit? Like what does that mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I joke with people that I've spent the last 5 years trying to forget that I'm a dentist so that I can better understand the patient perspective. And I have just talked to a ton of patients, the work I'm doing now, really trying to understand that patient perspective. And I think dental, for all of its good intentions, for many people has historically kind of been this like very paternalistic place of like scolding. I have a friend who literally calls his dental visit his biannual scolding. So, like that's not a good place to come from. I mean, he's fine. He doesn't have cavities. He's healthy, So I can only imagine what it would be, right? If you were going in all the time and having problems and whatever, like there's a certain sense of shame around that and frustration and whatever. And so I think, if the advice of like brush your teeth twice a day with fluoride toothpaste and floss your teeth every day, and that's like what's going to solve the problem of cavities and dental disease in this world, if that was all we needed, I think it would have, been eradicated a long time ago. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so what I saw is this really big need for, what does it look like to make dental care a little bit more human? What does it look like to create conversation instead of monologue, right? I think a lot of times it feels very unidirectional. Like, here's the information I need from my mouth, and where the destination is your ears, but that's it, right? And instead, like, what I've been trying to facilitate and foster is this, hey, we want to hear from you, because that's a really important part of the story as we seek oral health together.
Yeah. 2 experts in the room, right?
2 experts in the room. I love it. Yeah, no, you're good at remembering all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article a couple years ago, and we changed the title, but I feel like in some ways we're living this like post-expertise world, where it's like, hey, everyone's an expert, so it doesn't really matter anymore. And so the original, it was like very philosophical title. It was like, the expert is dead, something. And the people who I was, I have a group of writing buddies, whatever, that I share stuff with, and they're like, yeah, like, I get what you're trying to say, but like, there's definitely 2 experts in the room, and you need to remember that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. But yeah, obviously we have some clinical expertise in all the things we know about oral health town, right? We live here. It's great. It's a beautiful town. But the patient has a lot of expertise in themselves. And until we're able to share that together, we're not going to make the progress we want to make. And I think I liken it to a good guide, right? If you're going somewhere, you hire a guide, you expect them to have some expertise. But if they just like take you around, if they took me around to Seattle and were like, hey, here's the original Starbucks. It's like, I don't care about the original Starbucks. Like, I want to go to the really good coffee shop, like take me to the best coffee shop, not the original Starbucks. They need to ask me that, right? Like, what interests you? What do you care about? What's motivating you? Right?
Because you're the expert in what you want to see, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Right. So you're like, hey, like, let's do that a little bit more effectively. And here's, one of the things that I see is just the need, because I think clinicians want that. Yep. And it's not enough just to say you need to do it, right? We have to create the scaffolding by which people can, by which the grapes can grow up the vine, or by which the vines can grow up I know my analogy.
Yeah, I got you.
You got it. The grapes aren't going to grow, right, unless we build that scaffolding. So ultimately, if we want to produce the fruit, we need to build that scaffolding, not just say, hey, grapes grow. So that's really what, has been a big passion of mine over the last number of years, is what does it look like to support both clinicians and patients in developing those skills that are going to help them achieve the goals that they both want to achieve.